Hi, this is Joe Shannon. I'm a lawyer, a husband, a father of 6 kids, and I also host a podcast called Opening Statement with Joe Shannon. Please consider listening to our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, and any other folks that host podcasts. Just Google Joe Shannon and podcast, and you'll find it. I hope you enjoyed the show. So we're joined today by John Barry. I've been looking forward to this interview for a long time. John is not only a great lawyer, but he's a servant to our country. And I really love the mesh of patriot and somebody that not only talks about helping out veterans, but is actually a veteran himself, and does more than just talk. He walks the walk. So, hey, John, thanks so much for joining us today.
Joe, thanks so much for having me. It's an honor to be with you today.
So, John, just to give a little bit of a background for our listeners, John is a lawyer in Nebraska, although he's not limited by Nebraska. He represents U.S. veterans throughout the country and has over 5,000 clients. And he is a fella that knows veteran law, knows how to seek and obtain veteran disability benefits, and then helps these veterans who may have some difficult time adjusting to the U.S. when they get back from these very horrible war zones. And he does personal injury cases, he does criminal defense cases, all sorts of different cases to help those out. Isn't that right, John?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna move this up, Joe, so I'm not looking at the ground the whole time. I don't think I had a good this set right. But yeah, I started out, my father is the one who started the practice. My father's a Vietnam veteran, served multiple tours in Vietnam, has a famous case where he defended the commander of the 5th Special Forces and the entire team on murder charges. He subpoenaed Nixon. The case was dismissed, but he always helped veterans. And when he came back to the United States, he was working in New York for a while, and then he ended up back in Nebraska, and his mother got ill, and so he was going to help out the family, and he came back and he started noticing all these veterans that were his buddies that he was able to help with legal problems. He started noticing a common theme, which is now known as PTSD. A veteran who was a great guy in service, came from a great family, never been in trouble before, now has several DUIs, assault charges, other things. So my father was a well-known trial lawyer that wanted to help veterans, and that's how our veterans practice started. And it's been going strong. I mean, at the what was the Court of Veterans Appeals back in 1996, I think is when my father first started. And so we've been representing veterans in courts for over 2 decades. And he has, of course, been representing veterans in other capacities for over 50 years.
Wow. So you basically lived and breathed this as a kid and growing up. So tell us a little about your upbringing. Where were you raised? Were you raised in Nebraska then?
Right. So I was raised in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm the oldest son. We have 4 kids. I have an older sister and 2 younger brothers. Right now, my youngest brother is our CMO. My middle brother was an Air Force doctor. My youngest brother was a surface warship officer in the Navy. All of us got some type of ROTC scholarship. They all did better than me. My oldest brother got medical school paid for. My youngest brother got his full education. Stanford paid for. They got. I got 2 years of William and Mary paid for. But we all. it was a great experience for us. And I mean the real value is the leadership training, education, and of course all the opportunities I got in my 20+ years in the military.
So tell me a little bit about when you were growing up. Were you a sports guy? You were a football player, basketball player? What kind of sports were you playing?
Yeah, so I did it all. I mean, my dad was a college swimmer, so he wanted me to swim. I sucked. I was terrible. And, if you think about kids now, it was the same way back then, where everybody played soccer, everybody played baseball, everybody played basketball, and I was, average. It wasn't until we got to tackle football that all of a sudden it was all about being aggressive. And, that's where I really started to to do well in sports. The other thing is I had a paper route since I was 10 years old. So I would do my paper out, come back, put my uniform on and go to play football. And I remember in the winter, I used to go from doing my paper out, going to wrestling practice, going to swimming practice, coming back like at 9 o'clock at night. I mean, then I quit swimming when I was pretty bad. So, but it got me in great shape. And I've always, physical fitness has been important. I think I established a great base level as a kid.
Yeah, I was doing a little research on you before this interview, and I saw you were a bodybuilder too. I mean, come on, man. Bodybuilder, you want to do either bodybuilding or a triathlon? You chose the bodybuilding?
Yeah, well, it was interesting throughout my whole college career. I wanted to play college football, and I always felt like I was never big enough, strong enough, or fast enough. And so I wasn't. The years I was not at the University of Nebraska, where all my friends went, they have 3 national championship rings, 94, wow. 95, 97. I went to William and Mary, and I rode the bench, right? But so I was always trying to put on weight. The interesting thing was I couldn't get above 220. But then I went to Army Ranger School, lost about 50 pounds, and within 6 weeks, I was up to 230 because you just gorge yourself as you try to recover. So I think that, taking care of yourself, your body is your most important possession. And I've always been a big proponent of physical fitness, taking care of yourself, because if you don't, bad things happen. That's another lesson I learned in Ranger School is you make worse decisions when you don't get enough sleep, when you don't eat right. That's when you really fail as a leader. If you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of your team. So
let's back up here. So you got out of college,
yep.
And then you entered the military?
Correct. Correct. I went to College of William and Mary. I was commissioned as an infantry officer in the Army in 1997.
And so tell us about, maybe people don't understand what going to Ranger School. I mean, you got to go through a number of different levels to get to Ranger School, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, generally, if you're either an infantry officer, once you're a commissioned infantry officer, it's a foregone conclusion you're going to the school, whether you want to or not. But for an enlisted soldier, it's a little bit more difficult. They have to make it up in order of merit list or be in a Ranger battalion. For me, I saw it as I got injured my sophomore year in college playing football, but I just felt like I needed, I wanted more challenges. And I always knew I was going to be a lawyer, but I didn't want to go straight to law school. There was something more I wanted. And I was a paper boy, so I was very entrepreneurial in nature. Yep. And I just knew that I wanted challenges. And I thought, gee, I don't want to be a lawyer. Not yet. Right. So that's what I did. I went to the Army for a while.
So when you get out of college, then you basically went right in?
Right. So, I mean, as soon as I was commissioned the day before I graduated, and then my active duty started in about July of 1997.
Okay, so that was pretty interesting times, wasn't it? I mean, the late 90s?
It was, because we had the drawdown. And then, in March of 99, I was in Bosnia. I was with the 1st Cavalry Division, and we had just started bombing Kosovo. And so we were in the Serb sector of Bosnia, so things really heated up. It went from a peacekeeping mission to where people were, we were going on patrols 3 or 4 times a week to 6, 7 patrols a week to try to keep the peace.
Wow. And so tell me about what somebody has to do in Ranger School. What kind of physical requirements are there? I mean, people don't understand how tough this thing is.
Right. Well, the purpose of the school is to simulate combat stress through depriving you of food and sleep, and then hitting you with all this training and challenges. So the first week, they basically try to weed you out. And so there's physical fitness tests, there's a run with gear, there's runs without gear, combat water survival tests. There's a parachute jump at the end of that week, and then there's a 16-mile road march, and you get to phase 1, which is the Derby phase. And as you go through there's this huge obstacle course called the Derby Queen, and there are these monkey bars that are about that thick, and you have to wrap your wrists around them to get through it. But so there's a lot of challenges. You go through 3 at the time. There were 3 phases when I went through the 3 phases, which was the Fort Benning phase, and then you go to the mountain phase in Dahlonega, Georgia, and then the swamp phase in Florida. It's about running missions at a high level when you don't have much left in the tank, and leadership decisions. And I mean, yeah, it really teaches you though, you make poor decisions, and it also teaches you as a leader, you better be good at 80%, because you're not always going to be at 100% as a leader.
Right. So how long were you in the military then?
So I finished up active duty, and I went into the National Guard because they said, well, oh, you're going to law school? Great. We've got tuition assistance. And so while I was in law school, I was given a company command, which is as an Army officer, it's a great thing. You get 133 soldiers. And I thought, wow, if I'm going to run a law firm, this is going to be a great exercise in leadership and management. I'm looking forward to it. Well, about 3 years later, I'd been practicing law for a while, and I was, I realized that there was a little bit too much work going on. So I said, I went to my commander. I said, I think that now is probably the time for me to get out. I've completed my obligation, and I really can't keep doing both. I'm working, 60, 70 hours a week as a lawyer, and I'm a company commander. I'm putting in all this time. He said, don't worry about it. You don't have to do both anymore. Your company's been alerted. You guys are going to Iraq. So I didn't have to do both anymore. And it was a welcome break from the practice of law. You get out there and yeah, I mean, there's some things that are obviously scary, but Halliburton is taking care of your food and your laundry. And, at the end of the day, there's not a lot of errands to run. You're worried about taking care of your team. And back then too, the internet, we didn't have great internet. We didn't have great phones. So there wasn't always that obligation of calling home all the time, staying connected. You could actually just disconnect and be in the mission. And that's tough to be away from the family. But when you're involved in the very important mission and you're worried about the lives of sons and daughters, sometimes it's good to be able to just focus on the mission. And that's what I really enjoyed about my time was that, day in, day out, there was a new mission, and it was all about, succeeding in the mission. It was about not worrying about the distractions. It was about being focused. It was about taking care of the team. And one of the greatest challenges was making sure that the team members stayed focused. I mean, they had stuff going back on at home. I mean, it was very tough on the spouses. I had a 4-month-old daughter at the time. And so I knew what, my soldiers were going through. And that was one of the toughest things was, once they kind of heard about stuff back home, was getting people refocused on the mission, especially when you're talking about, mistakes mean life and death. And so we can't get unfocused here, and we have to find a way. And, I think back to, a lot of the mentors that I had, and they were always just very supportive. And one of the areas I found I was weak was really being empathetic about sometimes, when stuff was going on at home, because I was always just thinking about the next mission.
Sure. And what year were you in Iraq?
So I was there in 2005, 2006. We were out in Al-Assad, the Anbar province.
Oh boy. And so you're still working for a law firm at the time, but you're on leave, right?
Right. Well, fortunately, my father started the firm, so I was able to leave. But under the law protects National Guard and Reserve soldiers who deploy, and so even if my dad wanted to fire me, he couldn't have done it.
So when you got back from Iraq, thank God that you were uninjured, huh?
Yeah, I mean, that was, I think everybody's, I think that, some people fear dying. Some people fear, not coming back in one piece, coming back disabled. And I was fortunate, but there are several, as you go through military career, you meet people and those relationships generally stick forever. I mean, I still know people that I knew my first assignment in Fort Hood, guys I went to Ranger school with. And, a lot of those guys got injured, got banged up, and some died. And it's very difficult, right, to imagine, here I am, I made it, and this person didn't. And a lot of times you're thinking, and that guy was way more squared away than me. So it's, there's no real fairness to it, right?
Right, I get it. Yeah. So you get back in 2007. So here we are in 2020. Tell me about that journey from 2007 to now. What's been going on with the Berry Law Firm?
Sure. So yeah, I got back in 2000. Yeah, about in 2006, 2007. The law pertaining to veterans' disability appeals changed. It allowed us to get paid to represent veterans earlier in the process. So while we were doing a lot of pro bono work before, now we really had an opportunity to grow the firm. And so when I got back, I mean, that was part of it. We wanted to help more veterans, but now it's like, wow, this could actually be a viable business model where we can, instead of helping, a few hundred veterans, we could be helping thousands of veterans.
How
Right?
many folks were working at your firm back when you got back?
Oh, gee, one of the worst mistakes we made is when I left, we downsized. There was probably about 10 of us.
Okay. And
And
then,
now we're about 68.
wow, that's great. And so for you, it's, if you have 68 people, you serve exponentially more folks, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's the key. And people say, well, why grow an organization? Why grow a business? I think to some degree, to make a real difference, you have to reach a size before people will listen to you, right? Before people will understand your mission. And, a lot of people look at, our veterans and talk about homeless veterans and the suicide issues. And certainly those are all problems. But the thing that people aren't talking about is that if you look at the Fortune 500 companies and some of the greatest leaders right now in America, they're veterans. Right. Nobody's talking about that, and so part of my mission is, it's the next battle. And this is, Joe, we talked about my book, The Next Battle, and it's not just about, VA disability benefits. It's about the veterans coming back and rebuilding this country the same way our veterans did in World War II. Right. So you think about what value veterans bring to, an era where we complain about millennials and no discipline and no goals, right? This is the veterans that we work with are pretty much the opposite of that stereotype that you hear. These are mission-driven young men and women who want to serve their clients and serve our country.
Right.
Even though they're not, they're not wearing the uniform anymore. So
tell me, at your law firm, you hire veterans as well, right?
All the time, any chance we get. Now we want champions. I interviewed a guy named Daniel Lark who started a company, $100 million military apparel company called Grunt Style. And I was interviewing a lawyer in San Antonio I wanted to hire. And I called over there. I said, hey, I want to meet Daniel. You guys got this amazing company. And they said, yeah, come on over. So I went over there for lunch and first thing he did was offer me a beer. And, and he said, but he said, you got to be careful because in the military, we have the junior enlisted that never make non-commissioned officers. And sometimes we have officers that never advance past a certain rank. And it's the same way. I mean, just because they're a veteran doesn't mean they're going to be a superstar.
Right.
But they have the foundation to be a superstar.
The discipline, right?
The discipline, and we have a military culture. So they become a cultural fit. For us, feedback is always a gift. If you can't take feedback as a gift, you can't work here. Right.
So tell me about that culture that you've created. So, I know that one thing about that your firm that I really, like, I was excited about the interview was, I interview a lot of lawyers that they don't have that extra layer, which you have, which is, hey, listen, you're a veteran, you served abroad, you are actual ranger. I mean, you've got all this great background and understanding in dealing with all these folks. And then you're serving the actual people that you served with in the U.S. military. Tell me what the folks that work with you, how do you create a cohesive unit to support these folks?
Well, we treat it like we all know what it's like to be on a good team. If you've ever been on a championship team, you know the feeling. And so they've already been there. And Joe, I know you were athletic in your youth. You can probably think of the championship teams you played on. They know what that feels like. And they know that it takes a lot of accountability and responsibility. So they buy into our core values. And one of them is warrior ethos. Another one is leadership by example. And so we generally, we bring them back to where they were, where, hey, we're a highly disciplined unit. No one is more professional than I, and I'm not going to leave a fallen comrade. We're going to take care of each other. And that's the culture, and that's the military culture. And so it's bringing them back to something they already know.
That's great. And maybe you could tell us about some defining cases that you've had in your career at the Berry Law Firm.
Sure. Joe, I think in our field, sometimes people get too caught up in, I'm sure, people say, well, oh, well, Joe Shannon had that, $50 million case that he won, that big trial. I mean, people know Joe Shannon as a winner, and they see the numbers. They think, oh, this guy's doing great things. But I think what's most important is the human stories.
I agree.
We represented a veteran in Omaha, a Vietnam veteran who was living under a bridge, right? He was homeless. He had post-traumatic stress disorder. The VA never adjudicated his claim. We got involved. We found it. That guy got hundreds of thousands of dollars in back pay. He's able to buy a house. And then on the front end, he's getting, about at the time, it was about $36,000 a year. He was able to live. So this veteran who went from living under a bridge now has a house, has a family, has a wife, and is extremely happy. We were able to change someone's life. There are all sorts of examples, but one of the more touching one was when we got a veteran a large back pay award where he had been fighting for years. Had handled the claim 5-6 years on his own, hired us. We took the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, got it remanded. About a year later, he finally got the money, and it was a large sum. And the guy was crying. He said, I was going to kill myself.
When I did some research on your firm, that's why I got so excited to do this. I looked at all the reviews, and I was looking at those reviews, and I was blown away. You talk about the money, that type, the big judgments, that type of stuff. Listen, it's about the people. And one veteran, he basically had said that he had given up hope, that he had tried to do it himself, and he thought there was nobody out there. And then he, for some reason, got a hold of you guys, and then you turned it all around. You got him his disability benefits, his back pay, everything, and he completely turned around. So, I mean, if you don't believe me, ladies and gentlemen, for watching this, look at the reviews, and you looked at, it's jsberrylaw.com, right? Isn't that the
Right. So yeah, that's a great distinction to bring up. So our VA site is ptsdlawyers.com.
Okay.
My dad, our firm is jsberrylaw.com. That's our trial site. So because we do both, we try to keep something completely different for the veterans. And that was a decision because we almost run our practice that way, where we have our veteran side and then we have our trial side, which does personal injury and criminal defense, but ptsdlawyers.com. And I'll tell you, Joe, I mean, I was very skeptical. I can remember back in 2015 when online reviews were coming out, and I was like, these are stupid. I'm not going to pursue these. And then I had a phenomenal marketer came to me and he said, look, you need to wake up. This is what Amazon's going to do. He said, but how else are you going to tell your story through your client? He's like, you can get testimonials, but if you get reviews, ask your clients. And go to your clients when you meet with them during that initial meeting, sit down and say, look, we intend to provide you with 5-star service. And at any point we don't, you let us know and we'll take care of it. And opening up that dialogue got me a lot of calls at first because the VA is very slow to process decisions. And unfortunately, there's very little we can do as lawyers to handle that. But we would sometimes get dinged for the VA not processing the claim in time. And, the clients would be mad at us. There's an appeal. The VA hasn't responded in 6 months. It's been a year. We still don't have a decision. My lawyer sucks, right? And so
yeah, right. I get
we
it.
were seeing that. But then we had all these grateful clients. And my biggest concern at the time was, I don't want my team to get all down because of, because they're like, well, what can we do about this? And we did some things to speed up claims and we tried a lot of things, but ultimately it was, I felt like my team was getting beat up. So I said, we need to dig the good in this. And the good is we know we've got a lot of great stories. I mean, people were always sending us thank you letters and other things. I said, we need to get this out to the public and we need to get it out to the team. So now anytime that we get a 5-star review, we share it with the entire team. There's a mass email that goes to the entire team. Hey, congratulations, Seth Chambers. You did this, or congratulations, because sometimes, a lot of times you think it's just the attorneys, but we've had staff members who have gone above and beyond, so sometimes what'll happen is, whether it's a 5-star review or just an email that I'll get from somebody, like I said, that'll say, hey, one of your non-attorneys did this for me and I'm really grateful.
They're team members, right? And you know what, as a military guy, that every person on that team, I mean, you're as good as your weakest link, right?
That's right. But you got to share the wins too. I mean,
Sure.
Trust me, we are very critical. We're very, like I said, feedback is a gift, and sometimes it hurts. But when we win, and I didn't get that because, Joe, I'm kind of like you. Hey, I just want to win. And if I lose, hey, I lose, but I'm in this to win every time. When I win, I don't sit there and celebrate. I don't spike the football. It's on to the next fight, the next battle. And sometimes as a leader, you have to realize that your team needs to hear that praise as well. And I was very bad at that until we started sharing the good reviews and sharing the good emails and letters from our clients with the rest of the team.
That's great. And so PTSDlaw.com, I want to spread that out.
PTSDlawyers.com. I don't want to send you to a competitor.
Okay, hold on. Let's get that right because, I'm fallible here. PTSDlawyers.com, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so now you got 5,000 clients. I want you to have 50,000 clients because if there's one veteran in America or serving or abroad or whatever that has PTSD and hasn't got the claim filed with the VA right and hasn't had appeal right, they got to call you and figure out how to do that. And so if they Google John Barry veteran, will they get to you too?
They should, or Barry Law Firm. Yeah, they will find us. And Joe, one of the reasons why we have such a high number too is we represent veterans and other things too, catastrophic injuries, criminal defense, court martials. And so, we have, we want to help veterans. Like I said, you have to decide in your life who you want to be a hero to, because you can't be a hero to everyone. And I know you're very involved in your community, in your church, in your city, but for us, it's the veterans, and that's who we want to be a hero to, and we want to help them appeal their VA disability claims when they're unfairly denied. But we also want to help them with other legal problems, such as criminal problems, or when they are catastrophically injured. In Nebraska, if they're in Illinois, we're sending them to the best. We're sending them to you, Joe.
That's good. But for the PTSD benefits and the VA benefits, you can represent people throughout the country, right?
That's right. So we can represent veterans in all 50 states, and we do. We have all veterans in all states and territories. It really took off when we had hundreds of clients. It was all referral, word of mouth. My dad would go to the Vietnam Veterans Conventions. He would, they'd all get together and talk. And of course, one group, like let's say the people who served in, 19 Cav in Vietnam, then that whole group would say, hey, he helped me. Right. I think he can help you. And so it was spread by word of mouth through veterans. And so, over the years, we've been able to help thousands of veterans, and we hope to help thousands more, because in my mind, what we do is get veterans the disability benefits they've already earned.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, we ask these folks to go into harm's way. They go there and they lay down their life and their body, everything for us. They deserve this. This isn't something that, and they've earned it. This isn't something that's a gift or anything. This is basically, they earned it, and they've earned our respect. And so, thank God that you're out there, buddy. I can't imagine that you can't go away. Don't go away, John. So listen, can you tell some of the listeners what your some inspirational people in your life that kind of got you to where you're at?
I think of a guy, no one gets anywhere alone, right? And so I've had great coaches. I've had great friends. I've learned a lot from subordinate leaders. I think, I can think back to when I was in the National Guard. I was about ready to actually get out. It was after my deployment. I came back. They had promoted me to major, and I was like, okay, look, I've got a law practice to run. I'm getting out. And Colonel at the time, he's a colonel now, Gary Roper, said, hey, I want you to come work at the Officer Candidate School and develop leaders. And so I went there as the Officer Candidate School company commander, and just fell in love with it. And then I got promoted to lieutenant colonel, and as fast as I could, I came back and became the battalion commander of that training organization. But what I really liked about his leadership was he would say, hey, John, go do this. And that was it, and if he ever talked to me, he'd say, how can I help? And I mean, for a guy that is not good at having a boss, he was the best boss I could have had, because he got it, right? He's like, let me give you your mission and get out of your way. If you need anything, I'm here for you. Let me share some wisdom with you, but go do what you do. And I think, for me, I'm a self-starter. I like people who are self-starters. Just give me a mission and get out of the way. I mean, to me, that guy, I said, gee, that's the kind of leader I want to be, right?
Yeah.
The guy who will let their teammates grow and execute. A guy who always wants the A players on his team, and he's never afraid that they're going to be better than him. I mean, when I hire a lawyer, Joe, I want him to be much better than me.
Sure, me too. Yeah. So tell us a few of the habits that you have that make you an effective leader of your firm.
Well, the first thing is I'm very cognizant of how I take care of myself. So yeah, I get up at 5 every morning. I work out 6 days a week. I eat relatively healthy. I'll eat a healthy breakfast and a lunch, and then, we'll see how things go with dinner. But for me, it's almost like whether I'm leading my team or when I'm in trial in a criminal or civil matter, what I try to do is make sure that I am, I'm like an athlete. I'm in an optimal mental and physical condition. And I believe it all plays in the same. And that's what I learned in Ranger School. When your body is hurting, you're not getting good food, you're not getting enough sleep, you will make poor decisions. And so as a leader, your job is to be decisive. As a lawyer, you got to be decisive, right? I mean, let's face it, whether you're going to object to something is a split-second decision. And so if you're not performing at your optimum levels, you're doing your client, you're doing your team a disservice. So for me, it's about taking care of myself, physical health, mental health. I'll tell you, I was horrible my first probably 15 years of practice, putting everything in front of my family, and definitely, relationships suffered because of that. And I had that military attitude, right? It's
Sure.
like, hey, you know what? Suck it up. Mission first. And, the thing is, a good soldier has his house in order. And,
Right.
My family, early on suffered because I thought I had to be everything to everyone. And I've slowly pulled back on that. Now, I still am hard charging as ever. I just have gotten much smarter about how I spend my time, what tasks I take on, and what I delegate.
We're recording this interview during the time of this unprecedented COVID epidemic, and I'm sitting there. Our team has been working really hard during this time just to make sure that we didn't want to lay off anybody. We wanted to sharpen our knives and basically get ready for the next step. And I tuned into social media and I see John Barry, and he's got lined up along this wall all these backpacks, and I'm going, what the hell is he doing now? Tell the listeners a little bit about what you did.
So in the military, we had our bug out bags, right? So if you're going to go on a last minute mission, you had to have about 24 hours of food, ammunition, water, whatever. And you didn't always want to stuff it all in your big rucksack, right? You just wanted your bug out bag. So if you were going to get on the chopper that night, maybe you didn't have time to pack your ruck, or maybe you just had to run out from your, wherever you were, you always had the bug out bag. So that's what we created. I mean, phase 1 was deploying our remote workforce, but then phase 2 is the sustainment phase. How do you sustain your team? So we knew that they were missing things, like they'd been out of the office now for a few weeks. Okay. They have computers, they have all this other stuff, but they still need notepads, pens, toilet paper. And then we put in Easter candy and some other things, but it was, hey, and it was a nice North Face bag with, of course, our logo. And, but that way they can, they can load their laptop into it when they come back into the office, because from time to time, think about it, Joe, your remote workers are going to need to come back in the office and have your IT guy, tune up their laptop, make sure all the software's in there, And as much as, people think, well, we're cloud-based and we're not going to need to do the maintenance on the machines, or, that's not always true. And so we developed hey, throw it all in the backpack, bring it in. And our IT team will fix it for you. So that was the thought of that. And we thought about, how can we be a hero to our team? So we delivered all those with all the Easter candy. And with the kids ones, they had special kids things. For Marines, we call them crayon eaters. They had crayons, in those ones. But
that's awesome.
But we had it was a great opportunity to reach out to the team and go to their houses and see them.
That's awesome.
I love doing stuff like that.
So tell me about the crest behind you, the Barry Law crest that you have. What is that?
Sure. So it was actually created by a guy who was a Marine in Iraq around the same time as I am. His wife works for us. He worked for an ad agency at the time. If you look at it, you can see, so there are two swords, our veterans law practice, our trial practice. There's a star for excellence, and 1965, the year my father started the firm.
That is awesome. That is great. Well, this has been unbelievable for me to talk to a man with a mission, John Barry. John, is there anything else you'd like to say to the folks?
I would just, Joe, I'd encourage you to check out the Barry Law Facebook page. We had a couple days ago, we have a woman on our team who she got a letter from, I can't think of the second lady's first name, Pence, for being one of the military spouses of the year. And her husband was reenlisting in what is now the Space Force. And guess what? Social distancing, right? So they were going to do it via Zoom. So since nobody's in our office and we have all the branch flags in our reception area, he went in there, set up the computer just like this, and did a Zoom reenlistment. We got pictures of it.
That is awesome. We'll have to check that thing out on Facebook for Barry Law.
Yeah, so that was great. But Joe, thanks so much for having me, and thanks for all that you do for your community and your team. You're an inspiration. I love hearing what you're doing. It makes me want to do more. Part of it is because I'm very competitive, but the other part is I greatly respect you and your team and what you guys are doing.
Well, thank you so much, and keep up the great work for those veterans. I'm just finishing up my George Washington book, which I've read a couple times from Ron Chernow, and when he retired, General Washington retired, and he thought he was just going to go back to Mount Vernon and just hang out with Martha for a while, and then all of a sudden he retires, and then they come get him, and basically they elect him president, and he brought all these veterans back with them. And it you're into your law firm. You're basically a veteran. You came back, and then you went to work even double, bringing back all these great veterans to you. I mean, he brought back Alexander Hamilton, which was the #2 guy. He brought back General Knox. He brought all these great veterans back. And I just think, as being a history guy, it's so wonderful that a fella in 2020 is living what I call the American dream for the military.
Yeah, well, I think that's it though, right? We have to have gratitude. We have to be able to thank, to give back and to have that opportunity. And I think, like I said, I know that you're very big into giving back to your community, but also, giving back to your team and thinking back through history. How is it that we're able to be in this position? I mean, I have so much gratitude for where we are. And I think back to Washington, and it was Washington who crossed the Delaware on Christmas Eve to slit the throats of his enemies, right? So great respect for Washington, but also what does that tell you about the resiliency of the American people, right? We're in a tough time right now, but if there's one thing we have as Americans, it is that, we get through it, and we're tough, and we're going and as leaders, we have to remind our team of that. I mean, think of back then, what it was like to survive. People were, coronavirus, the death rate here compared to what they were dealing with back then. And you think about those soldiers in the winter and the frostbite, and we are a strong people. We're a strong nation, but we can draw some strength back from our history, where, our nation was founded by people who were willing to take risks, people who were not afraid, and people who wanted to take care of each other and didn't need the government to do it.
John, I think I need to book you to come to Chicago and start giving a number of speeches to the high schools around our area and throughout the country. What a great story. What a great life of service. What a great inspiration. I want to start getting up at 5 in the morning, even earlier now, so I can get to work, so I can keep up with John Barry. Thanks so much, buddy.
Thanks so much for having me, Joe. It's been a real pleasure.
All right, take care.